Thanks for talking to us today, Gabe and Annette.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Now I want to start with a bit of an overview. It's been a huge 12 months for gay people in Australia, and in fact for the whole of Australia. Since the plebiscite was announced and the lead up to that and the build up, there was so much that went on with that, wasn't there? How did it feel in that climate in the lead up to the yes-no vote?
Yeah, do you want to start? I'll start. The lead up to when it was actually announced that there was going to be a plebiscite, so that whole period of time, and then whilst it was out there, you know, the ballots were out there. I'd say certainly for the most part, from people we've spoken to and for ourselves, it was a very uncomfortable time, would be, I guess, just the simplest way of putting it. Because what it felt like was that everybody was being given the opportunity to have a say about whether we were okay or not, whether we should be considered legal or not. So I know that, you know...
Which is crazy.
Yeah. Which is crazy, because I know that there were people that said, why would you... It's like a human rights offence that this vote would even have to happen. That you would even be able, one, you know, person would be able to say another person's right to love and marriage was legal or illegal. So really what was being asked was for people to come out of the woodwork and declare their colours as to whether they were with you or against you. Is that what it kind of felt like?
That's right. And even outside of what the vote itself was asking for, should same-sex marriage be legal or not, yes or no, tick the box, it felt more like it was, even just putting that aside, what was uncomfortable was the feeling that people were, as I say, getting to have a vote about whether or not the fact that people are gay is okay or not. So now you know, being gay has not been illegal in Australia for a long time, but it felt like it was going back to that age of that we were considered illegal until such time that people vote yes or no.
Wow.
That we are or we're not. So that's why it was a very uncomfortable time. I know for us, neither of us have ever had an issue ourselves with being gay from the time when we knew or felt that we were. We never had an issue about it ourselves. The issue was always how other people perceived that. And not everyone's had an issue with it, but that was only ever the issue for us. It wasn't ever a personal issue.
Yeah, but even if you don't get outward abuse towards you or anything like that, we have a society that's set up to say, this is normal, this is legal, this is the institution of marriage, this is the institution of family life, you're different.
Yeah.
You don't belong.
Rebecca, that was the massively interesting thing. Like, I think it took us by surprise how much it brought up so much stuff that we'd already gone through. It was like a second coming out. You know, suddenly we're in... Because when you first come out, in some ways, or back in the time that I did, I'm 54, nearly 55 years old. So at, 17, 18, I mean, obviously knew I was gay a long time before then. I felt it when I was 5 years old. So the thing is that, you go through this period of time. It was very difficult for both of us coming out in our families, in our respective families, very strict kind of religious upbringing and all of that kind of thing, so very closeted, that kind of thing. So you go through so much in that, sort of coming out with your family and friends. But in a sense, you learn to be separate. You become separate in a way. So this whole year leading into all of this brought up all of these memories. Not necessarily we didn't dig deep into that, but it was felt like there was this low-level conversation going on about coming out, being gay. Even our families, it was bringing up stuff in them. We saw a lot of clients who are gay, who were going through a tremendous amount of healing process through this. So in one sense, it, as Annette said, it gave people an opportunity to start to talk about this, sometimes in a derogative way, or out come all their judgments and all of that kind of thing. But also, it was also very healing in the sense that there was conversation and a broader sense of, especially from the younger generation, going, hang on, there should be equal. There should be this equality. So
you
I
could say
wasn't-
this
I
was all
wasn't
bubbling
prepared.
under the surface.
Yeah.
This was all there, and it hadn't fully been dealt with. Like you have that time when you come out, and that's quite an intense time. And then I imagine, you can correct me if I'm wrong, that once that's happened and people start to adjust that's the way that it is, then a sense of like normalization happens. But did everyone fully deal with their stuff,
Yes.
or around it, or was it just kind of muted? And then so this kind of brings it all up to the surface again. So
absolutely correct.
yeah,
That's exactly what happened, and it was like a second wash or a second opportunity of everything cycling around for this massive healing for all of us, you know. But we were still on tenterhooks going, like for me, I thought there was no way the country was going to vote yes.
I
until the
actually
moment.
thought the same thing.
I
was
was
like, okay, you know, like you've got pockets of Australia that are very open, but is the mass open?
That's right.
Yeah.
And see, we live in a pocket of Australia that's very open, but certainly in my lifetime of, you know, knowing I've been a gay woman, there are definitely parts of this country where there is no way on earth I would walk down the street holding my partner's hand. Just wouldn't do it.
Now, can you imagine that? Like, we have to stop and actually feel that in this day and age, you would feel like it was unsafe for you to hold somebody's hand in the street, walking down the street in some parts of Australia.
And that's why, because there are areas like that, that's why I guess we just felt uncertain and at times felt like there's no way that the vote is going to go yes. So,
and because we'd had experiences as young people, and in different situations with jobs and sort of that, and clients and that you get that kind of prejudice, and so you grow up knowing that there's just this little bit of separation that goes on. It's just a consciousness, but it's still there and it's present. So I guess Annette and I were both feeling like there's no way it's going to be a yes vote. You know, so it was
how did it
overwhelming.
feel when you felt that the greater part of Australia had said yes?
Oh.
can I just go back to one thing first before obviously the outcome has been that it's a yes vote, and a lot has changed, and we'll talk about that. But what it felt like in that period of time was that the sense of what it brought up was, okay, we've been legal for a while in terms of we're not illegal being gay, but it felt like the waiting period, and because there was so much debate about it and the No campaign was so strong, they were so forceful in their promotion, it felt like we were back on display as to are we legal or not. I know I said that before, but that's just that was the energy that was there that was so disturbing, I think, for a lot of gay people, was it felt like we were, until we knew the result, it was a very marginalising feeling. And so what it exposed, or what it felt like, was that, okay, we've been legal to be gay, but it just felt like perhaps it was just tolerance.
Total
It wasn't
tolerance.
acceptance.
Yeah, there was no acceptance, and this brought that out of the woodwork. And so even while you can say that a yes vote is amazing, and we'll talk about that, the fact that there's any percentage of people in Australia that don't recognise love as love is devastating on one level, in terms of how far we've got to go to say no to that kind of abuse of other people, abuse of their human rights,
Separation.
the separation of it.
Yeah.
But this is something that is really embedded in culture. So I wondered, can we take a look back at you're 5 years old, you have this sense that it's girls you like, that it's not all. Because I remember being 5 and having crushes on the boys in my class, you know, and so naturally for me at that age, it's like, oh, you know, crushes are blossoming, and you know, like I think about the guy that I'd like to be my boyfriend and this kind of stuff like that. That happened quite young for me, but there's no pictures around saying your feelings are wrong, or you know, like there's no indication that that's not the right way to feel. But what is it like as a very young person that has a knowing or a feeling or a sense that they're gay?
Such a beautiful question, Rebecca. If I go back and feel that for myself, as a very young, like a 5-year-old, knowing, I mean, what does a 5-year-old know about relationships at that stage? Possibly everything in terms of love, because it's all encompassed in that. But I didn't have the language to explain what I felt, but I remember feelings that I wanted to be close with women. And it wasn't in a nurturing sense of like having a nurturing mother or something like that. It was something bigger than that. And I had a sense that this was wrong. Like, not for me. It wasn't wrong for me, but it was, I got the sense that my immediate family and society did not approve of this. I could feel that at 5. And in my mind, I was imagining, well, maybe when I grow up, because at 5 you know that you grow up and you get married, that maybe when I grew up and got married that I would have a girlfriend on the side. I don't even know how I came to manipulate that thought, but it happened.
But you're already trying to fit into the mold.
I was already trying to box myself for some way into having...
But knowing that you can't actually change yourself at the same time.
Like you wouldn't have had to feel that when you were, as you said, having crushes on boys. You didn't have to think, how am I going to do this?
Yeah.
How's that going to work out in the future?
No.
And
it's
then
just a natural development of your loving expression and affection towards other people.
And then if I go to teenage years, what I started to develop, which I think is really dangerous, is a duplicit way of being. And so I would be what my family wanted me to be at home and what my teachers wanted me to be at school. And I ended up being school captain. So I did that role very, very well. But then behind everyone's back, I was thinking, expressing, feeling completely different things. And in truth, I hated living the lie of that because I'm a very open, honest person and transparent in lots of ways. And so to live like that was very sad for me, really, in reality, if I look back. But it was a necessary way to survive, because otherwise I wouldn't have been able to experience and explore myself and my sexuality if I hadn't done that. That's the notion that I got. That's what I understood, and that's what I interpreted.
In a world in which there was true acceptance, you wouldn't have had to. There would be no splitting of your life.
Yeah.
You know, like you would have been the amazing Gabe that you are at school, and you would have had a beautiful partner by your side if you were in a relationship at that time. There's no reason for this other than the kind of set constructs that people get, these belief systems that then impose on other people about what they can and can't do.
Yeah, as you said before, probably the most disturbing thing about the plebiscite was that there should never have that question should never have even come up in the first place, but because of how our societies have developed, then minority groups are seen as different, or you know, you're not fitting in with the norm. You have to become part of the normal. In fact, there's nothing different about gay people. It's just love is love, and that beautifully became the catchphrase for the whole movement.
Yeah.
But that was the most disturbing thing, is that that question should never have even been a question.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
The thing it brought up for me too when I was young, when I first moved out of home and I had my first girlfriend, I actually moved out of home, went overseas with my first girlfriend to see, like, am I really gay? I didn't even know.
Wow.
I mean, I knew deep down inside, but I was like, well, what's going to happen to me? I remember going to confession, because we were brought up Catholic, and saying to the priest, I think I'm gay. And
how did he respond?
He was like, well, you know, like, he didn't...
He said, so am I.
Probably what he was thinking.
He didn't tell me what to do or anything. Actually, he was so loving back to me, or sensitive back to me in that moment. And he didn't tell me to do anything in particular, but he allowed me the space just to listen to the fact that I felt this way. But there was no resolve with it. I had to work that out for myself, and I realised that I had to have space. I had to get away from the belief systems that I'd been brought up with, whether it was education, religion, whatever, to understand who I really was. And I also had to live it, because how can I express to somebody, this is who I am, if I've not really experienced it?
Yeah.
You know, what's living with a partner day in, day out like, you know? So there was that. But at the time when I first came out too, for a lot of gay women, they lived in households where they only saw women. There was a lot of separatism and in gay culture at that time. And I didn't really relate to that. You know, they'd have, if it was an all-woman household, they'd have a woman plumber come to visit, you know, a woman mechanic, a female doctor that they'd see, everything. And so they sort of basically edged, because of the hurt that they'd suffered and the prejudice, they just edged men out. And I love men, I love boys, and so I didn't relate to all of that way of being, and I was confused about that. Did gay mean that I lose my relationships with men?
That's interesting, because you're trying to figure out if you're gay, but the representation of gay that you're seeing is also a reaction to hurts, and not a true, you know, not a true expression of being totally free and being gay either, in terms of that you can still have loving relationships with everybody.
Absolutely. And it's not just the hurt of prejudice that some of the gay women would carry, just the hurt of prejudice of being gay. It is the case that some gay people, male or female, are carrying hurts from other members of the opposite sex. Yes. And therefore choose, or, you know, are aligned to be gay because there's hurts with the opposite sex. There is that scenario as well.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that people are necessarily conscious of that, because everybody feels like being gay isn't a choice, it's just who you are. But there is evidence of that as well, that for some people it's definitely also contributed to by the fact that there has been abuse or circumstances that haven't been so loving with members of the opposite sex, so they feel safer with the same sex.
And that's an opportunity to heal and to have an opportunity to be with someone that they do feel safer with, and then rebuild that loving relationship.
Rebuild trust. Rebuild trust.
Yeah. But what happens when you grow up in a world where it's a heteronormative society. It's not. You don't see yourselves represented on the billboards or on the TV or in the ads, or so there is two choices at that point, isn't there? There is react to the hurt of that and make your own, like what you're saying, like make your own household where men aren't welcome or women aren't welcome, depending, so that it becomes like it becomes a safety in numbers situation. Yeah. But what kind of harms do you see happen when people really dig in in that way? Like, have you had your own healing around that? Have you supported other people to heal around that? Like, what's the fallout when that hurt means kind of throwing out, you know, understandably the unjust world that we're in, but really saying no to that? Is there a fallout then?
There's a great fallout, Beck. I mean, there's true parts to it and there's not true parts to it. So what it does when you perceive and you feel that you're separate from society and you're not normal, let's just say, and that was bandied around a lot. You know, like you hear even your parents say your lifestyle choices or
Choices.
you know, people don't introduce you as partners. They say,
Your friend.
This is your friend. This is
We still get
this
that.
is Gabe's
Been
friend.
together
Annette.
17 years and we still get that. Yeah.
So
This is Annette's friend, Gabe.
Really, really good friends.
this is Gabe's friend, Annette. Anyway,
Very close friends.
so what happens is that you then go out and you search for family, especially if you've been rejected by your family. You go and create your own family, your own little enclave. But then this is building an exclusivity. So the whole issue that we face is that everything's not inclusive. We're all not, you know, in collaboration with one another, and this has been the hugest healing for me with what I've learnt in my life, is to be able to be with everyone equally. But in the beginning, I sought creative people because that was my little enclave. They were my peeps, you know.
Yeah.
And
You can make groups out of anything.
Yeah, but you
it's like
ghetto.
an identification, and you ghetto yourselves in an identification.
exactly, and then that's dangerous in a sense. That's a not true version of love because then you just feel like you can only relate to those people.
So then that situation of the isolation is twofold in the sense of how it's come about. It's come about from the prejudice, but then it's also added to by people choosing to take that action and go, okay, we'll just stay separate in our little group here. So, you know, gay people are not free of the responsibility of that having been what's come from this situation.
And so you sort of feel like you're a less than and you're an outsider. And that's like, you've got to get out from underneath that consciousness. But the other sort of, if you could, for want of a better word, say positive or true understanding of that, which we both, it's made us great relationship counsellors in a sense. It was born out of that experience, is that we got to observe a lot how society conforms to beliefs, because we weren't part of those beliefs. So we sat on the outside and observed, and we were like, I don't agree with that, or that doesn't feel correct to me. And so you develop this sensitivity, because you are an outsider, to observe, you know, the detail of what society just gives their power away to. Like women that we grew up with, we were never involved in that competition between women for men, for example. So
you're looking at it all. You're the observer of all the dynamics, and
we weren't involved in it because we weren't a threat.
Yeah.
In a sense, you know, because we're not involved in that dynamic of chasing men
Not
or
in that
trying
market.
not in that market, yeah, or trying to get, you know, trying to be desirous for men. So it was like we could have different relationships with men that were more healing, more nurturing, more equal. You know,
beautiful. So you've got an incredible standpoint as an observer in that situation, and that's a richness that you would bring to your relationship counselling now, because it's like you're not embroiled in it, but you get to observe it, and that's such a beautiful reflection. It comes back to the point of how we're each here to support each other and to be a reflection for each other. And so you see how when we cordon each other off because we're hurt by the rejection of the other, and so we go into our separate little groups. We lose that ability to reflect what we're here to reflect to each other.
Yeah.
And you can see how everybody is such a beautiful part of the whole, because imagine what you could bring to women that are in that throes of competition and not feeling good enough, and you're very at ease in yourself with men. You know, like you can kind of say what it's like. You can support people with that. You know, like, what do you see as the unique qualities that gay women in their power bring to society and reflect? Because it's quite a beautiful reflection.
I don't know, I feel a gay woman, I mean, even that we have to say that is, you know, that's part of this conversation is, and we're underpinning this conversation is the fact that there shouldn't even need to be any delineation, and there shouldn't even need to be such a thing as coming out. But to me, just we'll use the term for the sake of this, you know, this conversation, a gay woman who is very sure of herself in her sexuality is very strong, is very confident. I think, as Gabe said, that whole competition thing that comes up between women around men really plays on a woman's self-worth. And I just don't find that, we just don't have that as gay women. Okay,
I mean, there's other stuff.
Yeah, we have other stuff, I guess. But I've always seen any gay women that I've known who have no issue with that in themselves and are not carrying the hurts from rejection of the opposite sex are usually very strong women in the sense of knowing who they are and feeling their place in the world, and you know, knowing where they're headed. There's an ease and there's a self-assuredness that I have encountered. Yeah. And
men would feel a certain beauty in that reflection as well. What have your relationships changed? Have they blossomed with men since you have developed an even deeper sense of your power as women? And let's just say as women, because that's the truth of it.
Yeah.
But what is the reflection that brings to men and your relationships with men?
Yeah, my relationships have definitely changed with men, I would have to say, as I've developed. When I was younger and first out, I was always a tomboy, but unlike Gabe, I always had, well, you did too, but I always had crushes on boys from very young, like you as well, and like Gabe, my whole life but I also had a couple of crushes on some women when I was, not girls, but when I was very young, I had a crush on a woman that we used to go on skiing holidays with. So once a year I'd get to see her, you know. But then when I saw my first, the woman who ended up being my first partner, when I saw her, that registered in me the fact that yes, something I had been sensing about myself was true. It wasn't until I saw this person and went, okay.
The light bulb moment kind of happened. Yeah.
And I think I was dating a guy at the time, and I was like, see you later. But anyway, I went into because I had always been a tomboy. And then I went just naturally into what I felt was my true expression at the time, very boyish, very, I guess, what we would refer to as butch in those days, and hardened up a bit and all of that. And I wouldn't say I had had great relationships with men anyway in my life until that point. But as I've come more into contact with, you know, deepening in knowing who I am and living that and coming back to the tenderness of who I am, which that hardness was never me, I've been able to relate to men in a much more open and real way, and that just continues to develop and deepen as life goes on, and it's really, really beautiful.
Yeah, because what I see in you is the power of strength and delicateness in one, which, you know, like I remember in the early days when I met you, you were like fully ripped and your body was like total
a brick.
It was like a brick. Like, there's not much movement. Yeah. I mean, you were super sexy, don't get me wrong, but it was like, the more that you have deepened into that balance of delicateness and strength, it's like you get the reflection of how powerful delicateness is. And, you know, like most women think that delicateness is a dirty word these days.
Absolutely.
You know, let alone gay women, how they feel about it. But we have relegated delicateness to weakness.
Yeah.
And not only women have done that, but men have done that. And in that, we lose out on such a full package, which is evidenced by the coming out of you, which has been that delicateness, but so married to that power.
Yeah.
So to me, that reflection of how powerful delicateness can look is, you know, like, is a particular quality that in your power you both bring as a couple.
Yeah, and thanks, Rebecca. I couldn't have said it better myself, but it's exactly how I feel. And that point in particular, that delicateness and tenderness, that is what has changed my relationships with men, and that's what I now feel in men.
Yes.
So that my relationships deepening with men and opening up and being more honest and real is not just because I've gone to this place, but because I've gone to this place, they get to also reflect that. And of course I know a lot of men too now who are also committed to living that for themselves too. So it's just such a beautiful, you don't associate tenderness and delicateness with men normally, but that's what I have been able to experience, is that men are just so
super sensitive, super delicate, and yet extremely powerful in that.
Yeah.
I know that we, in this world, that we have to, you know, we have to talk about gender, and we have to talk about masculine and feminine, and we have to talk about gay and straight, and
but let's strip it back to the essence.
But at the end of the day, you know, or always for us in our relationship, the key feeling was that love transcends all of that, and it's got nothing to do with it. When Annette was talking about that she was with a boy, but she actually, when she first saw the girl that she fell in love with, it's a resonance in your heart. It's like when you meet that person that you feel that resonance with, it doesn't matter whether it's a male or female.
Love is beyond the body, and it's beyond gender.
Exactly.
Love is beyond gender. So with that, that's really the takeaway here, isn't it? Because we can have all these discussions about the surface levels of gay woman, gay man, straight woman, straight man, straight, like even that term, you just go, that's so wrong. That's almost like saying normal man, normal woman, you know, like it's
twisted
like,
man, twisted woman.
Exactly. Like how wrong is that construct?
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, when every single one of us deepens, no matter what our orientation, we meet that same power, delicateness, love, sensitivity. That's the being within.
Yeah.
And the rest is just, it's just kind of like the window dressing, isn't it? You know, like...
Exactly, Beck. And which brings me to that point about the word lesbian, which for us, is we always, Annette and I both hated it. Now, some people really identify with that, but for me, I always use the word gay, because lesbian was a word that was used in such a derogatory way, especially when I was younger.
And the abbreviated version, which...
You know, you'd have cars of guys drive past, and you wouldn't even be touching your girlfriend, and they just like yell out, you know, you can imagine all sorts of obscenities. And so, and as I said, you know, growing up, sort of being the non-conformist to the conformity of what you're seeing in the world, you get to not attach to those details. So not attached to gender, really, not attached to, I mean, if you bring understanding to it, not attached to sexuality in that way. And by saying this, I don't have any judgment on people who do identify like that, because I think some people need the security of that. But if you understand it deeply, love transcends all of that, and it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. It's not significant.
That's beautiful. We actually are blessed with living in community that takes that and lives it. So, you know, the ageless wisdom teachings and what universal medicine has founded through Serge Ben Hayen is a community where everybody is love first and foremost, and that's the benchmark. So I had a friend of mine who's gay, who said that he used to walk into a room at an event, and the first thing he'd do was clock every gay person in the room and go safety, 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 and just beeline for them.
Yeah.
And what he found when he started to attend universal medicine events was that he could go to anyone and he could have the same openness and the same meeting of him. And so after he healed and developed from all the hurts that he'd felt in life, that there would be rooms where he'd have to do that in, now he was bringing out himself, and he could walk up to anyone in that room and know that he would be met as an equal. Now that's pretty extraordinary, that environment exists in what is a pretty backward state of affairs in life. So that's super beautiful. But that was a process for him. But what he found now was that he's now taking that into his daily life, into a world that isn't that.
Yeah.
But he's seeing change because of the body of openness that he's taking now to his relationships. And yes, there's still all the prejudice, and there's still the reality of the world and what he has to come up against. But things change through more openness. Would you agree with that? Is that something that you've seen in yourselves, in your practice?
Yeah.
Definitely. I mean, I totally understand that experience. I wouldn't say that's been my experience. I mean, for me, when I first came out, before the words were out, you know, it was, the moment was there, and I was with my mum, and one of the questions I remember her asking me was, "What's wrong with you?" And straight up I said, "There's nothing wrong with me, but people will think there's something wrong with me." So I knew straight away that it wasn't me. It was the opinion of society. So I ventured out into the world knowing there was nothing wrong with me, which didn't mean that I didn't feel the impact of prejudice, but I definitely just went, well, I'm not going to take that on. I still felt hurt by it at times, but I didn't take it on and convert that to me thinking there was something wrong with me. So I went out into my life and into my work and worked in hospitality. So you're with, you know, hundreds of people every day from all different walks of life. So I definitely felt that sort of being looked at as different, but I just didn't take it on. I just remember always sort of this feeling of, well, this is who I am, like it or not. It's not my problem if you don't. So, but I totally understand that for some people you need that security point, you know, in a room. So, but definitely I would say from my own experience going into the world with that openness, even though, as I said before, I was hard and all of that, I didn't completely ditch my you know, gentle, tender side, and that was the part that I supported myself with to not take on that prejudice.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
There's some, you know how you brought up the ageless wisdom teachings and universal medicine philosophies, which are so beautiful, which we both study under as students. One of the biggest healings for me was the way of the livingness religion, which absolutely accepts everyone equally. And having been brought up in a very strict Catholic religious environment and going to church, I had to go to church every weekend. There was no choice about it until I was 18 and I left home.
Wow.
Going to church and hearing the dogma, and especially about homosexuality and women, you know, women didn't really have a place in the church at that stage, and they've tried to be a little bit more liberal now, but I feel like it was a very heavy burden growing up with that kind of consciousness. And so to get to understand the way of the livingness religion, which allows the openness and equality for all people equally, and the ceremonies of birth and death and weddings. The constellation of that was so deeply touching for me when I heard the vows read for the wedding. It's the first time that I looked at Annette with tears in my eyes and went, one day we will be married under those vows. I think it was your wedding.
Wow, beautiful.
Yeah,
so
it was at your wedding.
So that was such a huge healing in the sense that I could be deeply religious myself, but be accepted as who I am and marry the woman that I love.
And not only that, but there's such a deep place for everybody in this religion. You were actually the celebrant of a marriage.
Yes, we were.
Last year.
Which in itself was just a huge honour to read those vows for another couple choosing to commit to that, or have already committed to that way of living, but making it official was just just the greatest blessing in itself, an honour to be able to do that.
Because in that, you get to, in those vows, you get to feel the expanse of love. Like, love is so huge. It's so powerful. So we shouldn't be compartmentalising it for this group of people and this group of people, and it
just seems so petty, doesn't it?
It's ridiculous. It's so retarding in the true sense of the word.
It's backward, the vows are absolutely exquisite, and even for somebody who is married, in a heterosexual relationship, when we went to the courthouse to get married officially, the vows that they wanted us to read, we didn't want to read. The institution of marriage, as it is like, it's still like there's ownership of the woman over the man over the woman, and it doesn't seem like it's the truth of love either. So for us to be able to say those vows at our wedding was completely expansive and liberating as well. So it's actually blown open the institution of marriage altogether to be something that's way more encompassing of not only the love between two people, but what that love then reflects out to the broader community, and that love is for everybody.
Yeah,
and that's
beautifully said.
Yeah, and that's what you bring to your practice as relationship counsellors as well, because you're two gay women, but that doesn't mean you only see gay people in relationships.
We hardly see gay people.
We're constantly seeing heterosexual
we
couples.
Could probably count on one hand how many gay couples.
There's a lot of husbands who come to the sessions going, "Oh, what are two gay women going to teach me about my marriage?" That kind of thing, and they're pleasantly surprised. In fact, they're blown away. They're like, then they say, get their mates or their friends. You got to go and see these girls.
Yeah, that's just gorgeous. Because after all, love is love.
Exactly.
Beck, there's one other thing pertaining to that question that you asked about how is it now in Australia since the plebiscite, since the vote. Just everywhere we go, everyone feels so proud to endorse the fact that they had something to do, or they participated in the fact that you're together now under this marriage equality.
Wow.
It's literally
it's so
overnight.
Beautiful.
I mean, maybe something has lifted off us as gay people because we go, oh wow, we're actually, we have got approval, but it was literally an overnight change. Just say, for example, we're at the department store and where previously we would be holding hands, which we do, and you could feel, you can feel around you certain people looking, going, oh, it's a gay couple, two gay women. Overnight, that same movement, walking in the department store, holding hands, you feel people looking at you in appreciation, but also that, as I think you said, a sense of ownership that they had something to do with you being okay to do that. It's kind of cute.
So they're celebrating that is now an
Yeah.
expression that people have said yes to and that they had a part in saying.
So with that, what it feels like, that tolerance that I mentioned before, it feels like that has actually shifted from tolerance to acceptance.
Right.
And you have people come up all over the place and go, you know, how amazing was the vote, you know, to you, as if like, yeah, because you're gay, you want to have a big chat about D&M with them in the grocery store or something like that.
Well, it was a moment of such unification for people for love, you know, and that's what's being expressed, is we got to express love in a public way and vote for love, you know. So
Absolutely.
the people that said yes to that.
And you can see the delight and the joy in all people's faces, instead of the, you know, the sometimes you could feel with parents with their kids, you know, like back in the day, it was like, stay away.
Wow.
Stay away from those people.
Don't infect my kids.
Yeah, that kind of thing. Or, you know, it's just ridiculous, the kind of prejudice that is, you learn to suppress and just to ignore and that kind of thing. But now it's like there's visibility.
Yes.
And we have this visibility, but we're just part of society, and it's all normal. And it always was. It's just ridiculous that it had to come out this way to be understood.
So what would be great to see unfold from this, and pretty certain it will, it might take a generation, I don't know what's considered a generation, but that there is no such thing as coming out. And there is no need to identify as gay or straight or any, that it's just, we're just people.
Wouldn't that be amazing?
Yeah, and it's just love.
That's revolutionary, like that the idea of coming out is itself indicative, you know, like that says more about the state of the dysfunction of society than it does about the person that's supposedly going to come out. Who put them in the closet?
Yeah,
You know? I know. Who locked them in the cupboard and said, we don't want to see you? You know, that's the person that locked the cupboard.
Yeah,
not the person in it. You know, so that's beautiful. There should be absolutely no one should ever have to come out.
And that might take a little while as same-sex marriage is, you know, now legal and people are getting married, and it's just very normal for people to see, you know, children to grow up seeing
that this is our future.
Same sex, exactly. That's the future. That's where it's headed.
That's what we're looking at.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Thanks for speaking to us.
Thanks,
Gabriele.
Rebecca.
Thanks.
Beautiful.